Hello, this is Dread from Epoch Builds, and in today's video topic, I am going over Shield Rush Bleed Paladin, a build where you're speeding through 400 corruption like butter, and able to do T4 Arena Champions and T4 Soul Bastion as well. If you enjoy Last Epoch content and want to see more of it, I'd suggest liking the video, as that's the best way to let me know you want more videos like this. So Shield Rush is a very old skill. You can tell by looking at its skill tree and animations. However, this does not mean it sucks. It's actually the complete opposite. I fully expect this build to be nerfed, so try to play it before the fun police arrive. The concept of the build is to turn off Shield Rush's cooldown by making it cost health as well as a hefty chunk of mana. But if you channel Shield Rush, then let go, it will let you refund your mana back spent. So instead of using Shield Rush how it was intended as a movement skill, we simply just spam the button wildly to apply a large amount of hits. With these hits, we also apply bleed. Normally, Shield Rush builds like this are very hard to get working, because each time you attack, you lose 15% of your current HP, which stacks up fast, and most forms of leech can't keep up. But since the last time I've played this, and I'm pretty sure anyone else either, Valdir's Chalice was introduced into the game. Valdir's Chalice gives us a lot of nice generic stats, like bleed chance, duration, and leech. But the best mod on the item gives us 20 flat HP per bleed on an enemy when we kill them. Since we are stacking a large amount of bleeds, this normally brings us back to full every single time. Normally, this is not enough to sustain yourself for this setup, but we pull some shenanigans to make it even stronger. This build focuses on keeping your effective health high while keeping your actual HP amount low. This means even at 2.4k HP, I am tankier than a lot of the builds you see everywhere due to all of the defensive layers we have. We of course have Wings of Argentus, which is 40% reduced damage while moving. The nature of Shield Rush allows us to be moving pretty much all the time, well half the time, so it works perfectly for us. Also in Shield Rush, you take 20% less damage while using it, which will stack on top of Wings of Argentus' DR. Both of these DR sources, some endurance threshold stacking, armor, and block scaling, make it so if we hit a mob a few times and it dies, we instantly jump back up to full HP, making the HP cost irrelevant. Actually, it helps us significantly. So if you do not know how leech works in this game, you attack. You gain HP back over time. When you reach full HP, you lose the rest. Even if you have 10k HP leeching back, once you hit max HP, it just goes away. But if we're constantly losing 15% of our HP each time we attack, it means we leech back the damage constantly, kind of working like a pseudo health regen. And even if we're technically at full life, we still, of course, get the leech back, which we technically are never at full life because of Valdir's Chalices, except for like Valdir's Chalice procs, of course. This lets us face tank bosses like it's nothing. There are some important things to be talked about, so stay for the next few minutes. You will brick the build without this info. With all that being said, let's get into the video, shall we? Alright, here we are in game with the build. Sorry there's no cam this time. The sun is entering my room and I have no way of dealing with it currently. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is there is one very, very specific thing you need to know. Do not build attack speed. Why am I saying this? Well, first thing off, without any attack speed scaling, right? We'll, fuck around with the dummy real quick, I'll show you. We're doing like plenty of damage, right? We're like 300k ticks when we're like up on reversal and stuff. So obviously damage isn't a problem, so we don't even need the attack speed anyways. We can go for like crit multi everywhere else and not as much attack speed. Also as well, if you attack too fast, it will brick your mana. I'll show you here. Just give me a moment. It's hard to do it here. There you go. It bricked my mana. You see how I lost some mana there? Well, that is because you do not gain the mana back. Like, it takes a bit of a second to get your mana back. There you go. Beautiful. Beautiful. There you go. That's what I want to show. You can break your mana if you're attacking too fast. Now, there is a way around this. There's two ways of dealing with this. One, building into mana regen. I have a Bleeding Heart with mana regen, and I have mana regen on my Ranger belt, and up to 13, and that seems to be pretty good for most of the time. Now, the other way of dealing with mana loss is a very special tip. So normally, Shield Rush, right? You just charge, and you go back and deal damage and all that, right? Well, instead of doing this, what we're going to do is you're going to hold your cursor in front of your character and then spam right click. That with the same amount of attack speed that I have in the mana regen makes it pretty much like I can just do this forever, right? Now, sometimes in the middle of the Monolith of Fate, or like whenever you're in a boss fight, it might not always happen like that. So that's why we have the mana regen to help fix it if that becomes a problem. But most of the time, this is good enough to make sure your mana is not bad. So you just want to hold your mouse near your cursor while you're attacking things, kind of like as though you're playing like a shield charge build in Path of Exile, or like a shield like crush build. Think of it like that more than a movement skill. Don't use it as an actual movement skill. As an actual movement skill, it's trash in comparison to other options. But as a damage skill, oh my goodness, does it do the damage. So let's get into the skills here, shall we? So you take 3 points travel into Rush Mastery. The mana efficiency doesn't matter at all. 1 point into Desynchronized Charge. It makes it so whenever we do this, it brings us to the starting location, which doesn't matter if we're just spamming it like this. It's just kind of, making us move around and stuff. Doesn't matter. 1 point into Mana Memory. It gives us our mana back when Shield Rush ends, but it does slap a 10-second cooldown onto it. But thankfully, we can grab the Rush of Sacrifice, which turns off the cooldown, but it makes it cost 15% of your current health. So it is always your current health, so you cannot actually kill yourself with this, but you can get very low and like have other things kill you. So that is why all of that sustain is very important, right? Because the more HP you have, the more you're going to lose, which is why we want to keep the HP very low, right? Now, we also have 2 points into Protective Speed. This is damage taken while rushing. Pretty much this is like half the time. Pretty much DR that's up half the time, because with the way we're doing it, we're pretty much like rushing half the time, right? Which is pretty good. Then 3 points travel into Warrior's Entrance, although having area is absolutely phenomenal on this build, and if you have extra points, I would heavily suggest putting points into area because it makes the clear feel amazing. As you can tell, that's a big area. Then 1 point into Echoes of the Charge. Shield Rush's final hit strikes a second time, but Shield Rush deals less damage. So this says negative 20% less hit damage. That means if we were like to do like a crit hit kind of setup, this would be a 20% less damage modifier. But since it is negative 20% hit damage, I believe this affects the dots. I believe. I'm not entirely sure. The wording on this skill is absolute garbage, but it's like whatever. I can explain in a second here. So 4 points into Splintering Impact. We get 80% more final hit damage. This is not hit damage. This is the final hit. So Shield Rush has 2 parts. This thing where you can hit the stuff while you're charging, right? You can hit stuff while you're charging. And then there's the final hit, which is that thing, right? This is referring to the final hit. This thing, the thing that echoes. So this is 80% more damage with that. So it will apply to our bleeds, right? Then 4 points into Consuming Path. The reason why we have 4 points here and then 4 points here is because damage modifier is a multiplicative and you get more damage bang for your buck with both of these instead of just 8 and 1. Now, Shield Rush would be really good with plus levels with like a Fizz belt, plus the Fizz skill belt. You can also get an Argentis with like +2 to +3 to Shield Rush, but good luck getting that. And you could always use I guess you don't want to use an Omnis, but still, yeah. You can get it to +3 or +4, and you just add a bunch more damage, and you'll have way more damage than I do. I just went into AoE because I really like 3 points out of this. It makes the AoE feel big enough to clear monoliths very easily. And that's pretty much it for Shield Rush. Holy Aura, this is your normal utility setup with Holy Aura with the res, endurance, HP, and block effectiveness. But we're also grabbing Flame Burst. Why are we grabbing Flame Burst? Well, Flame Burst is just a big hit, right? It's an extra hit every 6 melee hits, which we, of course, get a lot, right? And it has this 200% more damage modifier that is it is only like it's not only for hits, it's for everything, including bleeds. So in theory, if I press Holy Aura and I hit a bunch of times, as you can tell, the Holy Auras are proccing, which will apply, of course, more bleeds. And every single time we use Shield Rush, we actually hit twice because of that. So we spam it and we get a bunch of Holy Flamers. This not only helps a lot with like packs that are really tough, this also, of course, gives us more single target because it's like adding an extra hit every 3 hits. So it's like close, I think, like to 10% more damage, like 10-20% more damage. It's really hard to like calculate that, but it's somewhere near there. It's somewhere close to that, right? So it feels really good, especially in monoliths. And whenever you proc it, right, like everything just blows up and it's amazing. Definitely a good way of setting this up. You want to definitely ignore the attack speed as well, because you don't want attack speed at all. Reversal, stereotypical dot reversal setup. We grab the increased damage taken here, increased damage taken here, which gives us close to 180 increased damage taken by the enemy, one of the best modifiers in the game. Then, of course, the movement speed, so we can move around quicker when we reversal. And then, of course, we grab the cooldown nodes here for time loss vitality, so it actually does not take forever to cool down. Now, be careful if you're spamming reversal, you can fuck up your mana a little bit. You can definitely fuck up your mana because it will revert your mana. Because you want to have the mana for the reversal trick, right? To bring back your mana back. So that is that is sadly something we have to do for that. Sigils, stereotypical sigil setup. We just have block instead of damage. Sigils on kill, increased damage per sigil, duration, armor, of course, the max sigil, and the block chance. Block chance is really, really, really good with this build because we are utilizing a Flare's Pride, which does not have much block on it. So having as much block as humanly possible, the better. And of course, lunge. This is just a stereotypical lunge setup. Technically, you don't even actually need this. You could use teleport, smite. You could use whatever you want, but I found lunge with a combination of Dawn Charge to feel really good. And sometimes when you pierce through a bunch of mobs in a pack, especially in like arena echoes and stuff, you can get a fuck ton of penetration and you deal significantly way more damage. And of course, the 15% coal is always nice. So yeah, lunge is pretty good. You could probably use something else, but I like lunge myself with this setup specifically. And that's pretty much it for the skills. Now for the passives here. I have 8 points into Fearless. HP, we want a little bit of HP. We don't want too much, but we want more than a little bit, right? 5 points into Armor Clad for the DR taken from nearby enemies. We're always nearby enemies, and the flat armor is nice. 4 points into Juggernaut. I'm using it to cap my Void Res, so that's why I have 4 points in there. 3 points into Gladiator. You at least need 1 point to get the block chance, but since Flare's Pride is a low-level shield, the base, you have a lot less block effect. So you want to grab as many points into this as possible eventually to get as much block effect as possible. Then 5 points into Steel Aegis, the same thing like I said, you want as much block effect as possible. Then 10 points in Abyssal Endurance for the HP, the trifecta. Then 1 point into Avoid Corruption because we are a Salt the Wounds build, so we want as much crit multi as possible. A 1-pointer for a little bit of bleed effect is always good. Then 8 points into Conviction for the Fizz Pen. We have Fizz Shred, but we don't actually get to cap on Fizz Shred. So Fizz Pen is very strong for us for our dots, which does work for our dots, by the way. 3 out of 5 points for Honor, of course, with the block effect and block chance. 1 point to Divine Bolt. It's just a bunch of extra Divine Bolts for clear. It makes it feel a little bit better. And for a 1-pointer, it's definitely one of the best nodes on the tree. 10 points into Valor for a bunch of flat HP travel because we don't want anything else. Everything else you could put into endurance percentage if you're not capped on endurance like I am. That is a good way of using the rest of your points, or of course using the Ellie Res here because that can help you with your suffixes. Then 4 points travel to Holy Symbol. This is another flex spot. I'm Captain Necrotic. I don't need more than 4 points, but you can, obviously at your discretion here. 5 points in Sanctuary Guardian. Eventually you want 8 out of 8, but I'm utilizing some nodes in Faith Armor to cap my crit avoid because my gear sucks. So you want eventually 8 out of 8 because you want as much flat armor as possible, and this is a very good node, especially with all the armor we have. I'm using Faith armor right now for Crit Avoid. If I had Crit Avoid capped in other means, like for instance, this was a Crit Avoid helmet, I would probably be able to dump most of the points into this and then dump it everywhere else here. Eventually, you want 12 out of 12 in Prayer Aegis is a very strong node for us because not only does it give us HP, it also gives us Endurance Threshold. And like I said, we're stacking Endurance Threshold so that our our HP feels way better. 8 points into Penance for the melee bleed chance, of course, very strong. 7 points into Redemption for the bleed effectiveness. Even with Salt the Wound stacking, this is still a very strong 7 points. Then 12 points to Reverence of Duality for increased health as well. And that's pretty much it for the passives here. Now for the gearing. First thing off, you must be wondering, Dread, why are we using a Flayer's Pride? Well, we're utilizing a Flayer's Pride because when you do dual wielding, right, which would be obviously way more damage, you take 15% increased damage, which is a lot of increased damage if you did not know. So instead, we get the best of both worlds because we use a shield that gives us a chance to bleed and bleed effect, while also being a shield. So not only do we not take the 15% less, we also take less because it's a shield with block effect, block chance, and 13% less physical taken on block. An LP Flayer's Pride would be absolutely amazing. I have been farming for it for a day, the whole day of the patch. I've been farming for it, as well as keys and stuff like that. And as you can tell here, I have been farming this forever. I have been doing a bunch of echoes trying to get an LP Flayer's Pride, but sadly, to no avail. Then, of course, helmet, bleed effect, bleed chance while wielding an axe is very strong. Bleed duration is also very strong. You could probably get a triple prefix with that. You want endurance instead of HP, then endurance percentage. You probably want this on the, the Crit Avoid base, obviously. Then Amulet, Bleeding Heart is your best in slot. This build can function without Bleeding Heart. The problem is if you don't have Bleeding Heart, you need to have a significant portion of more damage than what I am showing right now, because your leech obviously scales off your damage, and we have 2% leech from here, right? And this is obviously 7%. So we need like 4 times the damage to get the same amount of feel, but it's fine. It's just like, why not? This has been purported to be nerfed eventually because Bleeding Heart is insanely OP on a lot of different builds. So eventually this will get nerfed. So I'm just proving to you now that you can go without it. If anything, you could go for an Omnis, save up some suffixes for where you need res, and of course get +1 to Shield Rush, which is very strong because of the more damage. So Bleeding Heart technically is not best in slot. You could go for an Omnis, but right now I'm using a Bleeding Heart because I landed mana regen on it, and that's what I needed. For implicits on the Amulet, of course, mana regen, Fizz Pen, crit multi for your Salt the Wounds, HP, endurance, frailty, the usual. Taste of Blood. Why am I using a Taste of Blood instead of a good weapon? Well, partly it's the only weapon that I have that does not have attack speed. So let me show you something. So let's say we have a weapon with attack speed on it, right? Like, look at this one. You must be thinking, Dread, this actually looks like a really good axe. Why don't you use it? Well, let me show you why. So I'm going to go from 19% attack speed to 67. Now, watch my mana. That is why we utilize a Taste of Blood with no attack speed on it. Now, you could get crit multi, that would be more damage, and of course, bleed chance as well. So you could definitely upgrade this significantly. Now, what I really like about bleeding Taste of Blood is because whenever you hit bleeding enemy with a melee attack, all bleeding stacks on that double in speed. Now, it can't be doubled and doubled, right? But why this is so strong is because we can stack a lot of bleed duration as a paladin, well, as a sentinel. So all this bleed duration becomes bleed effect in terms of clear, because you want to clear packs quickly. And normally, if you stack duration, like for instance, if you have like an 8-second duration bleed, but the mob dies in like 3 seconds, well, that 8 duration goes to waste. But with a Taste of Blood, it doubles that and doubles your bleed damage. So instead of killing it in 3 seconds, you kill it in 1 second, and your bleed lasts like 4 seconds. So Taste of Blood is definitely best in slot for clear. Now, eventually you'll want like a Dragon Bone Axe with crit multi, fizz damage, damage over time, bleed, whatever, the usual. Eventually. Now, you don't want attack speed whatsoever, so that's why I'm specifically using this. Then for the chest, of course, Wings of Argentus. You don't need a Wings of Argentus. You could use a +2 Shield Rush. You'll be a little bit less tanky, but it's, of course, worth it because you get a bunch more damage. And if you want to do more damage, that's what you do. Rings, fizz damage, strength, damage over time. These are prefixes. You want at least 2 mana regen prefixes to feel good. So wherever you can figure out to mess around with that. Strength is very strong because not only does it give us increased damage, it also gives us a significant portion of armor. And that is why we're using strength there. And then, of course, resistances, endurance threshold, endurance percentage, HP, block chance, block effect. Generally, you want like T7 block chance rings or T67 because that can give you a lot of block effect, which makes up for the lack of block effect you get from a Flayer's Pride. You can also go up here to Age of Winter and grab block effect there as well if you need it. And then, of course, damage over time, endurance threshold, endurance percentage, the usual on rings. Rings aren't that important. Of course, you could use vitality rings, you could use movement speed rings, you could use whatever rings you get as long as they have the mods you want. And of course, belt, HP, cleanse, and mana regen. If you had a belt, if you had a Thorn Slinger that has like HP and mana regen on it, it would be better than this belt because you get +1 to Shield Rush and you could put it in some damage. And you also get a bunch of generic bleed chance on hit. You also get movement speed. So all in all, Thorn Slinger is your best in slot belt once you get like a 3 LP one with a bunch of HP on it and mana regen. Or get mana regen on your rings somewhere. And then, of course, run double HP mods and you should be good to go. Then gloves, Salt the Wounds. Salt the Wounds, of course, gives us a significant portion of bleed effect. Even with this small amount of crit multi that I actually have a very small amount of crit multi, 250, but it is our best in slot because not only does it give us resistances, also gives us crit multi, and then eventually when we get crit multi on the axe, crit multi on the bleeding heart, crit multi on the Valkyrie's chalice, that's just more bang for our buck. I just don't have all that crit multi, but as you can tell still, it still gives a significant portion of damage. Now, if you were to get LP ones, you do not want attack speed, so you probably don't want to waste Assault the Wounds on this build, specifically an LP one, because you definitely want attack speed on Salt the Wounds for other builds or throwing attack speed. So you definitely do not want to waste Assault the Wounds LP on this. Just use our normal one. You don't need LP. Boots, HP, movement speed, crit avoid, HP. I'm using it to cap my crit avoid. You could obviously shuffle things around to get better crit avoid elsewhere, like a better helmet, for instance. Then, of course, Valkyrie's Chalice. Like I said, this is literally our best in slot. 20 HP per on kill per stack of bleed on target. Absolutely insane. As you can tell, if I walk up to the dummy and I hit it twice, they already get up to 10. So if that mob just died right there, I would have gained 200 health, which is 10% of my HP. So each time I kill something, I get like 10% of my HP, if not even more. So Valkyrie's Chalice is nuts. Of course, the global bleed chance is nuts, and of course, the bleed duration. I do not have that much bleed chance on my tree. It's because I don't need it. I have plenty. You could go for way more with like Taste of Blood, with your idols, but I prefer bleed duration because I like bleed duration block effect idols because it makes up for Flayer's Pride's weakness. Now, of course, you want an LP Flayer's Pride with block chance, block effect, damage reduced on block, stuff like that, but I don't have one right now because I am poor. Then, of course, Throne of Ambition. This is the main way of scaling armor on bosses. This makes it so you can tank things like the T4 Arena Champions, the Soulfire guy, Orbis, the usual. So Throne of Ambition, always best in slot for a lot of different builds, specifically Sentinel. And that's pretty much it for the gearing, and that's pretty much it for the build. Thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful rest day wherever you're at, and bye.